I may be developing an unhealthy relationship with our new theme music. Randy, I am in love with this. This is like the best way to start a show. It just changes the whole feeling of this thing. You did an awesome job on this. This is where you say thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. I didn't
compose this or play any of those instruments.
You told me you wrote it.
I found it on the internet.
Well, I believed you. All right, everybody, we're back. It's the Unified CXM Experience. This is part 2 of our influencer marketing, influencer relations interview with Marshall Kirkpatrick, who's VP of Market Research at Sprinkler. And for the Unified CXM Experience, I am your host, Grad Kahn, CXO, or Chief Experience Officer at Sprinkler. And welcome to the show, and let's get back to it. Do you feel like, have we answered the question of like, I need influencer marketing. Why?
We haven't, but typically,
like, because I heard Grad talk about it on Unified CXM Experience is probably not adequate, although probably sufficient. But really, like, what is it? Like, what would maybe? Is there a way to think about whether or not influencer marketing is a good idea for you, and whether or not you do need it? And if you do, like, how to think about, and we're kind of going through the steps of how to make it happen right now, but how do I even know that it's a good idea for me?
It is so ubiquitous in the marketing world now, and I feel like it is so important for anyone taking a product to market to be aware of who the key opinion leaders are in their market, and hopefully have that be a reciprocal awareness that there's no question on my mind that every brand should consider it. I'd say that the appeal of influencer marketing as a flashy way to drive a lot of leads is something that so many people are drawn to, that most folks who are listening to this and thinking about how to do it well are going to be doing that because someone has come to them already and said, we need to do some influencer marketing. And hopefully whoever it was that came to them with that request is ready to hear that there is a maturity model, that there is some observation and some sophistication that is required in order to do it effectively. But just as likely, someone came to them and said, throw some money around and do something superficial and hope that the leads come pouring in. And then you've got another challenge to change that mindset. But I think that just about every marketer these days is presented with the opportunity to come up with an influencer plan.
So saying, do I need influencer marketing is a little bit like saying, do I need email?
I think so. Yes.
Okay.
Well said.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well said.
I like that. It's a good answer. Okay. Let's keep going on. I'm building out my influencer marketing program.
So the last part around engagement that I think is really important is about the importance of keeping a steady flow of activity going, typically on social media already yourself. If you reach out to someone and there's nothing for them to look back at that you've been publishing the day or the week prior, or if it's not terribly exciting, then that's a more common problem than you might think. I love the wisdom of that, albeit sexist genius Pablo Picasso, who said, you never know when creativity will strike, but it prefers to find you working. And
I don't know that quote. That's an awesome quote.
Yeah, huh. I find it really inspiring as well.
It prefers to find you working. Wow. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, it's so true, actually. Huh.
And I think that's true also of effective relationship building with influential people. You never know when your outreach is going to land well. You never know when an opportunity is going to come up for collaboration. Just a real natural, smooth opportunity. You never know when someone else is doing work that would just fit in really well with what you're doing. But they'll come and they'll see your pitch, they'll see your outreach, they'll see your engagement. And if you keep things rolling and keep the engagement frequency high and your activity level high, then the right people they'll find you being interesting, and they prefer to find you being interesting, so that they can think that it's worth their time to engage.
Okay, I love that. That's great. Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, I this is not a quote from anybody, but it potentially is that I'm just ripping it off. But I've always said that momentum drives momentum. There's and any action is better than inaction. So I'm a big fan of just get started, for God's sakes, because that's the hard thing. And then once you get going, you'll figure it out. You'll make it better. And so you feel your way into it. I think iterative work is always more effective than sort of pondering the universe and then finally trying to do something, because inevitably you're wrong at the beginning. And there is actually, this is an actual Napoleon quote. I think this is Napoleon. I'm pretty sure this is Napoleon, which is, "No battle plan survives contact with the enemy." That sounds right? Like, I think that's Napoleon's. And so he would organize things in really simple ways, because you have these elaborate plans, but once everyone clashed, all hell broke loose, so to speak. And so it was very hard to predict. And so he actually spent a lot of time on observation of the battlefield to redirect and to think about how to make changes in the battle plan once contact with the enemy was made. And I do think that, as you do things, they cause changes in the system. And as you observe things, it causes changes in the system. And it's only by observing those that you're able to kind of keep adjusting to make it really effective. And I think that's so true of influencer marketing, because what you say to them on the initial outreach, which may be well crafted and well thought through, may just be completely wrong for what they're thinking. And you'll know because no one responds to you.
Agreed. But if you can point to something that's already working too, and that's already interesting and exciting, whatever that may be, especially if you have the good fortune to be working with a known brand, that's going to increase your likelihood of success so much. I remember, Grad, I hope you don't mind me telling the story, but I remember someone once asked you in a meeting that we were in, they said, they said,
"Why?" It's a good story, a bad story.
It's a good story. It's a great story. I love it.
My palms just started spontaneously sweating.
We'll turn the tables here. And, who's
all right? I said something out of a meeting. Okay, I'm always okay. Yes. Right, okay, I'm braced. Okay, so, got my seatbelt on. I'm ready.
So one of my favorite things. I feel like I want to take a inspiration from this for the rest of my life. But someone said, Grad, why don't we X, Y, or Z, or when are we gonna, do this or that? And you paused for a moment and you said, "Oh, the train's already leaving the station. Look at what's going on here. We've got this going on and that going on, and a bunch of us are on board, and we're taking off. All you've got to do is come and jump on board with what's already happening, and the momentum has begun." And it was such an inspiring response, I felt like.
Just telling something I'd say.
yeah, it was great.
Well, what did you like about that? What did you find inspiring about that?
It was, well, in that case, it was such a way to turn a critical question back on the person who was asking it in a way that was that called them in. It like brought them into the fold to say, it kind of said you're wrong about this, but we're not going to focus on that. We're going to focus on, come on in with the rest of us. It was just a delightful mix of warm and effective, and the kind of thing that people respond to so well. I think that what John Hagel calls an opportunity-based narrative everybody wants to be on a winning team. And
True.
And so whether it's internal communication or influencer relations and outreach, if you can reach out and say, hey, you know us and you know me, we're working on something really exciting here, and can we talk about it? You want to get on the phone and compare notes? That's one of the ways that I like to initiate a lot of, next level engagements with influencers, is to not jump straight to the, hey, can we get married, level of communication, but to say, we've been communicating on social media some. We're working on some stuff that I think you'd find really interesting, and I bet you're working on some stuff that you haven't talked about yet either. Do you want to get on the phone and compare notes? And people love doing that, especially in B2B. In my experience, I like to go first. On those kinds of calls, to kind of set the tone for the level of detail and intimacy and disclosure that are appropriate. And then we'll turn it over and ask them, tell me about your projects. Oh, you're about to come out with a book? Oh, that's cool. You're about to, you're working on this new topic or theme. That's great. And then there's opportunities to do what Dan Pink in his book, A Whole New Mind, refers to as symphonic thinking. He says,
symphonic thinking.
One of the key skills in the future of work is the ability to draw connections between seemingly disconnected things.
Nice.
And so if you can get in there
synthesizing, but that's great. Yeah, that's
awesome. Mix it up and say, oh, you know how what we're doing and what you're doing could be connected in a way that's mutually beneficial and interesting, would be like this. And most influential people are creative, dynamic folks that you show them a good project with momentum that they could connect with as well. And that's going to be one of the most interesting opportunities that they hear about.
Very cool. Okay, I love it. Okay, so where are we right now in our process of thinking about how to roll this thing out?
We're into the last stage, which is the collaboration stage.
Okay, great. Okay, let's talk about that. It's always my favorite stage.
Well, what is it about that stage that you like so much, Greg?
Well, I think the most interesting thing about business. I've probably said this before. You're probably gonna go roll your eyes when I say this because you've probably heard this a few times now. But fundamentally, humans are social animals, and a business, I think, is a great expression of social connection. Because while we sort of think we need all the things that we build and create every day, we don't really need it. I mean, we could totally live like in the forest, and we could forage, and we could live in a mud hut, and
if you insist.
Well, I know you love that, but just you don't need anything. We're animals. And raccoons don't, have high rises. But what makes humans interesting as an animal? I know sometimes people freak out when I talk this way because it sounds like I'm describing humans in a third party, like I'm not one, and I've had feedback that maybe I'm not, but I am human. At least I bleed red. I'm not bleeding green. But I think what makes humans interesting is that we are extremely social, and it's that social nature of humanity that made us effective hunters in sort of earlier days, and so we could bring down a woolly mammoth with a whole bunch of humans, whereas obviously one human versus a woolly mammoth, that's a story that's easy to write. 20 humans versus a woolly mammoth, the woolly mammoth's probably not going to make it out of that one alive. So, and we've progressed now to a stage where we're building these soaring office towers, incredible bridges, beautiful works of art. Like, we're doing amazing things, but while we don't technically need it, we do it, I think, in large part because it's how we connect to each other. So the reason that collaboration is exciting to me and interesting to me is that many of the tasks you've described already could be performed in a somewhat solitary way. I mean, there clearly would be better as a team. And there's a lot of team sport stuff that can be built around, especially the identification stuff. And how to build the outreach correctly, et cetera, et cetera. But they don't have to be a team. Whereas that collaboration stage, and you're going to dig into it more, that's when everyone has to come together. And that is actually, while it is the thing we love to do as humans, it's also a very difficult thing sometimes to do. And when you do it very effectively in an organizational context, it's powerful and exciting. And there's nothing like seeing collaboration light something on fire. It's the most exciting thing in the world, I think.
Agreed. But it is hard. And that's why having a skilled, experienced practitioner be the one kind of leading the charge makes a big difference. In early social web days, there were some folks that drew a lot of comparisons to an old practice called tummeling, which is the...
Tumbling or tunneling?
Tumbling with an M. So it's...
T-U-M...
M, two M's, E-L-I-G. So
I don't know that word. Okay, tumbling. Okay.
It comes from it's like an ancient Jewish wedding function.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Where the wedding party would hire a tummeler, whose job it was to come and get people dancing. Because
isn't that interesting? Well, I'm getting married. And it'll be a Jewish wedding, so I should hire a tummeler.
I think it.
I didn't know that was a thing.
It could really serve you well. So the other context,
lay that on my fiance tonight. I'll say, we thought through the tumbler strategy here.
Exactly.
I'm so excited.
Invitations, cake, but where's the tumbler? And all
where's the tumbler? I'm like, that's the most important thing.
So tumbling again resurfaced in like 1930s, 1940s. Eastern Seaboard resort culture, where the musicians and the comedians, kind of like the marvelous Miss Maisel, if people have seen that
I'm
show.
watching that right now. I've been holding off on season 3. Season 4 is about to come out, and I kind of missed season 3 when it came out. I was busy. I don't know what was going on, but I couldn't really watch it, and so I've held. And now season 4 is announced to come up soon. So now I'm like rapidly pacing my way through season 3, which is incredible. So yeah, I'm all over that.
Great show.
Maisel, my hero. Yeah.
So people in that function, whether they're musicians or comedians, many times would be hired with the understanding that they would be in charge of providing entertainment at night on stage, but during the day they would be hanging around the card room and the side of the pool, acting as a social lubricant and saying, "Oh,
interesting.
Grad, that's really interesting what you do for a living. Have you ever met Randy? He was just telling me the other day about something similar. We got to get the two of you together." And it was their job to facilitate relationships. And now in social media, there's a huge opportunity to do that online at scale. And I'm of the belief that that's a really good way to lay the foundation for engagement and collaboration with influencers, to be actively building connections between people and people in your brand, and just cultivating a positive atmosphere, at which point it becomes a much easier lift to say, "Hey, let's do something together. Let's make some content. Let's come to my event. Let's do a webinar." Because
Very
everybody's just already they want to dance, and you get it rolling. And so those are sort of the in one way the observe, orient, decide, act model too is one where when we're early in influencer marketing, a lot of people presume that the deciding is really important and that the acting is where most of the time and resources are going to go in. But generally in an OODA loop, the Air Force recommends too that you invest most of your energy in observe and orient. And
interesting. Okay.
If you spend enough time and do a good enough job knowing the landscape and thinking about how your strengths can connect to the people in that landscape and cultivating relationships and what have you, then the decide and act part become much, much easier. So you create content together, you do something together, and the last thing in this model that I would share is another perhaps counterintuitive sort of thing, but something that Forrester points out. A couple of years ago, they said that the savviest brands in the world now, after a few years of influencer marketing, have realized that it is early in the maturity curve of influencer marketing that we presume influencers are going to bring all the reach. If only we could pay this person to say our name, then the cash would start flowing in. And there's certainly in some markets that can work that way, but misalignment with brand and influencer will break it and what have you. And the algorithms on social platforms too are such that the savviest brands in the world, Forrester says, now know that they should not rely on influencers for reach. They should look to those influencers for world-class content that can break through the noise, and that the brand then amplifies with paid media.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
And
I get that. Makes sense. That's a smart redirect on that one. I like that. Do you have this? Do you have like a just written down? Not written down, but like, do you have like a diagram on this OODA loop, or do you have any like assets on this you could send to Randy? Because we'll post the podcast on the website and on the blog, and it would be nice to have some of these kind of accompanying diagrams.
Yeah, I have. I've made some diagrams and tweeted them out, over the years, okay. Especially when
even if it's just hand drawn, it'd be great.
Yeah.
You send us a load of tweets.
I will do. A big part. I don't have a static strategy or even a playbook. A lot of it is up in my head, and I refresh it every time. I refresh my influencer lists every time. I refresh and iterate on the strategy each time, and that's what keeps it fresh and authentic too.
Interesting. Actually, speaking of tweets, I did a presentation in Boston about a month and a bit ago. And this person, I can't remember his name right now. He was another influencer. And his whole speech was just a set of tweets that he'd done. Did you remember who I'm talking about?
Yeah, Evan Kirstel.
Right. It was awesome, too. He did a fantastic job. Better than great. It was fantastic. I loved it. But what was so fascinating about it is that about 3 slides in, you think, hey, wait a second. He's just showing tweets that he's done. Like, with his slide deck. It was just kind of, and then I did this tweet. And the tweets all, he had a narrative that he drew between the tweets. But it was so fascinating. I'd never seen that before. It was great. And it basically takes the content that he generates on Twitter and then, slaps that into a deck and can stand up in front of a crowd anywhere. Brilliant.
He may have been showing his most successful tweets on that. He may have tested out concepts, just like a comedian will write a lot of jokes that they play in small stages, see what gets the most laughter, and then put just those hits together into a show to play Madison Square Garden, and everyone thinks, "Oh my goodness, every joke is hilarious." But it's because they iterated on a smaller stage.
Yeah, and Miss Maisel, the episode I just saw, she's going to be opening for a music act, Shy Baldwin, and which I think is just theoretical. I don't think it's a real one. And she's testing out some material prior to opening in Vegas for him. She's going to be his opening act, and there'll be like 1,000 people in Vegas. And so she's in this small comedy club where she got her start, and she's trying out material. And she has, and it's great because it's a show, they can have the audience react any way they want. So they want to show her bombing, right? Although I thought the jokes were really funny. And one joke was, she said, I've been traveling a lot, and it's interesting when you travel, you often, sort of forget about the things that you don't sort of spend a lot of time with, and you don't think about them anymore, like your children.
Oh,
that was hilarious.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, and then, like, the audience is dead silent, right?
Oh,
hear the air conditioner. That's it, or something. And then the second one was, then she goes, where she goes, airlines, and this is like in late 1950s, it's like 1960, I think. And so it was actually a very funny show. There's another really great line in it too. So she said, airlines are always complaining about kids on the plane, and people don't like having kids on the airplane because they're noisy, making noise, and people are always like complaining about kids on the plane. She goes, if that's true, like if airlines really don't want kids on the airplane, then why do they make those little tiny kid-sized bottles of booze for them?
Yeah, those are great.
Again, total, like the crowd's just looking at her like, mm-hmm. And then there's another line in this. This show was like full of jokes. There's another one which was her father. He's been arrested, and now he's working with all these communists, like not communists, but they're like,
was Red Scare era type stuff?
No, communist is not quite right. It's like all these kids who actually are communists, but it's all about they're all protesters and revolutionaries, and they're singing the Internationale and all this kind of stuff, and it's and he's. Oh man, I actually forgot the joke. I got into describing the scene so much. It'll come to me in a second. I got another kid joke, and I'll do this one. So and then another kid joke was it's a different comedian, but it was the same. I thought it was another funny kid joke. She goes, she's a super young looking comedian, very young, very very attractive. Looks like she's like 25, maybe. Definitely looks like 20s, early 20s, mid 20s at the most, right? She's not. She's actually quite a bit older than that. But she just has this really young look, and she's gorgeous. And she says, I have 4 children. And as soon as she says that, you think, wow, really? Because you find yourself thinking to yourself, wow, she looks like great for having 4 kids and really young to have 4 kids. It's just like it's a spontaneous thought when she says, I have 4 children. And she's like, I often get the question, were they adopted? I often get the question, were they adopted? Which, again, I'm deconstructing this a little bit, so it won't be quite as funny because they're doing that way. But I'm also not her, and I'm also, kind of mostly not a video for most people listening to this. And she says, and so when she says that, you think to yourself, yeah, maybe that's why she's so young and has 4 children, because she adopted them. That makes sense, right? So you're kind of, the thing about what makes a joke work is the surprise of it, right? And then her answer to that question. So she said, when people ask her if her children were adopted, she goes, she put it, it was so well done. She says, no, we tried, but they were too old.
Oh. Oh. Yeah.
Anyway, so going back to Internationale Crowd. So the joke on that one, which was super fun, is they were coming up with the name of their broadsheet. They're going to do a revolutionary broadsheet and publish it. And Abe, who's Miriam's father on Mrs. Maisel, Miriam Maisel. So Abe is, sort of professor at Columbia, just got dismissed, but he's like looking for his new thing, and he's trying to connect with these kids who are eating him at a house and home. And they come up with 2 suggested titles for the broadsheet. One is, It's All About the Jive. And the other title is, It's the 60s, Man. Those are the 2 broadsheet titles they're proposing. And Abe goes, those are great titles. They're timeless.
Oh.
I loved it because it's like, oh my gosh, like what was less timeless than it's all about the jive or it's the 60s, man.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So people
how
say,
did we get on that? Why were we talking about Maisel?
jokes.
You said Mrs. Maisel, and I went off in this terror telling jokes.
Well, comedy is a lot like influencer relations, or vice versa.
Okay, let's go with that for a second.
People say,
let's build that one out.
people sometimes say, if you want quality, go for quantity.
Oh, interesting.
take a lot of
Okay,
shots
yeah,
on
right.
goal. Like instead of just stressing out about your one big shot, your one big outreach to somebody, chances are it's going to look like someone who hasn't been out there in the mix. If instead you can do something that I once took a singing workshop from a wonderful New Yorker who traveled around the country teaching people to sing, and he said, lower the stakes. When you get up to sing, just lower the stakes, and it's going to be all the easier to do. And the same is true with influencer relations. You want to just be out there, mixing it up, making contact with great frequency, and no single communication is going to make or break the whole thing. Just lower the stakes for them, and before you know it, your exciting project that you're just reaching out to friends about, someone's going to bite, and you're going to be able to collaborate, hopefully do something really great together. But don't shoot one shot. Take a piece of content, break it up into multiple different formats, just like Evan Kursell did in that story that you told. And then take whatever content worked best, just like whatever joke was the funniest, and invest more in it, amplify it with paid. And so many of those entertainer and communication skills that have been honed for centuries in other contexts would serve us really well to be applied here in influencer marketing, influencer relations today.
Very cool. Well, I like the way you did that. That was awesome. I think that might even be a good wrap up. So are we? How do you feel on this? Is there anything else that the audience should know or think about in the area of influencer marketing? Do you feel like drain the pond on this one, or do we have anything else we want?
Well,
to point
there's a doorknob topic, if you will.
Doorknob topic. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, this is like the Columbo as just one more question kind of thing.
It's something to say on the way out the door.
Okay, I like that.
And that is that there's a big opportunity for those of us doing influencer marketing, influencer relations today to hop on board the shift towards values-oriented consumers.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
In the United States, it's especially young people. In Europe, it's not just young people; it's people of all ages are making decisions based on the impact that brands have on the world, and they're making purchasing decisions that are really informed by their values. And influencer marketing, by default, often ends up going back to the same people time and time again. And in many industries, not in all, but in many, including in tech, the usual suspects are the usual suspects. You line up a bunch of influencers that you might want to connect with, and they will be disproportionately white and male. And there is a big opportunity to go beyond those usual suspects and bring in additional new voices who are changing the demographics of the workplace, and who can bring perspectives that can really speak to the values-oriented consumer. And so what I recommend is that people in the observe and orient stage invest in building out some listening channels specifically to people of color and women in their industries. Go out of your way to deliberately build out your reading list to include those voices. Listen to, this is presuming that maybe you are, as you're listening to this, maybe you're a woman of color, or those are, that's your own demographic group. But most influencer algorithms, and if you just look at who's already popular today in many industries, that won't be who you pick up. But building out a deliberate reading list, bringing in perspectives outside of traditional dominant perspectives will be super helpful. And then when you make your list of people that you want to engage with, stop halfway and ask yourself, what does this list of people look like? What are the lived experiences of these people? And in many cases, it can be good to then say, you know what, we need to be deliberate about let's add some folks that come from outside of the usual suspects to make sure that we've got a good, well-rounded, diverse set of perspectives. That'll improve the relevance of your content and your marketing. It's going to help it land more effectively, and it's going to make it more relatable to all the people that you want to reach out.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. How do you see it fitting into like ESG programs? Maybe define that real quick, like, just so people I think most people know what ESG is now, but let's just define that really fast.
Yeah, it's an acronym for environmental, social, and governance, meaning the impact that your organization has on the environment, on social power dynamics like gender, race, sexuality, and governance around like the ethics and the operational justice of the organization and engaging with it. That's a really good question, Grad. I was speaking to someone the other day that had just joined a company, and she said that the company's ESG initiatives were not what she was going to work on directly, but they were really important to her decision to join the company. And I said, but how did the company position themselves around that? And she said, my would-be the hiring manager that was interviewing me not only referenced that they had a working group on women in the workplace and diversity in the workplace, but that person knew all of the specific initiatives that those groups were working on. They could demonstrate an authentic connection there. And so when reaching out, when you get on the phone with influencers to exchange briefings, and if you're reaching out to a diverse set of people, if you're able to reference credibly and meaningfully and genuinely some good work along those lines, that may make all the difference in your ability to build those new connections and collaborate with a diverse set of influencers.
Very cool. That is a great doorknob topic. I love that. That's
Thanks.
Awesome. Okay. Well, Marshall, this has been really fun. We went a little longer than I expected. This will probably be a two-parter. I'll have to record an in and out on this one, but well worth it. I feel like this is a great chapter on influencer marketing, and people will be well served by following this advice. And maybe we'll do a follow-up. I would love to drill into some of the things that we're doing at Sprinkler and some examples there, and we can kind of keep following it and keep looking at how that works. And of course, you can use Sprinkler for influencer marketing with an influencer marketing module that's in Sprinkler. So as part of the unified CXM platform.
Yep, I just used it yesterday.
Just used it yesterday. Fantastic. That's this thing you're slacking me right now, probably. So that's sometimes these tools are separate, but they're a lot more effective when they're connected to the content marketing platform. So you can use the content that exists in the enterprise and all the social listening, all the social media management, all that kind of stuff. If it's all one package and one parcel, then you're going to have a much more effective program. So check it out, Sprinkler Influencer Marketing. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap. Any last words, Marshall? Anything else you want to add before I kind of call us out on this one?
It's been such a pleasure, Grad. Thanks so much for having me on here. I enjoy working with you so much, and what a fun thing to do together. Here, congrats on all the momentum you built on the show. This train has left the station. It is time to get on board, folks. One thing I didn't mention this at the top, but you did a show called Coffee Club for a while. I'm going to say 2 years. Am I right about that? Yep.
About
yep.
2 years.
Yeah.
Couple
Timeless, truly timeless content.
Well, really, and you did like big shows, guests every time on video, and you had some amazing guests. And Coffee Club still is available. I think it's
Yep, it's up on our YouTube station.
up on our YouTube channel. So if you want more of Marshall, and who doesn't want more Marshall, check it out. Coffee Club, Sprinkler Coffee Club. I loved that series, and I may actually start to extract some of those shows into the Unified CXM experience, so that we don't have to work as hard. Just kidding.
Well, you build relationships and you
content's so
create
great,
content, and then you don't have to work as hard, and you make it look easy.
You make it look easy. Yeah, that's what it's all about. All right. Well, thank you very, very much for the time. Sorry we went over, but I think the next meeting is our meeting anyway, so we'll just kind of keep that ball rolling. And what I'm going to do is wrap now. Thank you, Marshall, for the time. Marshall, VP of Market Research at Sprinkler, has been our guest today talking about influencer marketing or influencer relations, depending on how you want to look at it. This has been the Unified CXM Experience. For the Unified CXM Experience, I'm your host, Grad Kahn, Chief Experience Officer at Sprinkler. And we are going to see you next time.